what I'd like to do is give a presentation of the stages of progress in this particular practice. So again, to read from this quote from Dujung Limpa, he says, "Loosely relax and watch your thoughts from afar, clearly observing whatever arises. That which observes is called mindfulness, and that which is observed is called movement, and resting in that state is called stillness. Identify them as such and meditate." So the door of entry into this practice is, as he says, identify them as such and meditate. So to identify stillness from movement. So to distinguish stillness from movement. Because if we don't do that, we're just caught up in the movement. We're identified with the movement and off we go. And then there's a presentation called The Four Modes of Mindfulness that describes some stages that we go through in this practice. The first is called single-pointed mindfulness, and this is when we simultaneously become aware of stillness and movement. Because initially we're probably more focusing on stillness and then movement and back to stillness and back to movement like this. But then we'll have what's called single-pointed, where we'll be simultaneously aware of the stillness of awareness and the movements of our mind. And of course that will probably take quite some effort to do that. So the second stage is what's called manifest mindfulness. And now, at this stage, we can be simultaneously aware of stillness and movement, and we need, with not so much effort, it becomes more in a bit of a flow, that it becomes easier and less effortful. So this is sort of towards the middling stages of these 9 stages that we're going to look at. From about stage 4 onwards, we're having less effort with our mindfulness and introspection. The third stage is called the absence of mindfulness, but it doesn't mean mindfulness disappears. What that really means is that at the deeper levels of this practice, the coarse mind starts to, this threshold starts to go down. So the coarse mind starts to become more subtle. And this is at the point where the coarse mind, the one that's active now, dissolves. Sorry?
Can you read it? I can see.
Yeah, so absence of mindfulness is the point where, as we get deeper into this practice, our mind becomes more and more subtle, and the coarse mind that we have now dissolves, becomes dormant. And of course, with that, the sense faculties shut down, they become dormant.
And what is the manifest again?
Manifest is single-pointed, where it becomes easier, it becomes more in a flow. You need quite a lot of effort to do this, And then as we get into the practice, that becomes easier and less effortful. And then the further we get into the practice, the mind starts getting more and more clear and stable, to the point where this coarse mind we have now dissolves. We're now in a much more subtle level of mind, and with that, our sense faculties shut down. And then the fourth stage is called self-illuminating mindfulness. So this is when the mind now becomes completely still and we achieve shamatha. So there's no appearances, there's just awareness. And it's self-illuminating, meaning we are completely aware of awareness. We're resting in that state with clarity, non-conceptuality, meaning the mind is completely still, and bliss. So this is the result of shamatha. So this is a presentation that you will see sometimes with respect to the practice we're doing today, these 4 modes of mindfulness. So we'll talk more about the stages of progress in general, of course, in shamatha. This evening we're going to look at this 9-stage model, which is the standard model that you will see for shamatha. But this is one presentation that sometimes you'll see with respect to particularly the practice that we are doing here today. So what I'd like to do now then is go back into the practice again. One more thing to talk about, and then we'll go into the practice. As with the practice from the day before yesterday, the one of observing the mind and all the mental events, quite often we can miss the more subjective mental events, that is, things like emotions and desires and mental afflictions. These are so close to us that often we miss them. So what I'd like to do in this next session is, when we are resting in the stillness and then observing the movements of the mind, pay particular attention to these types of mental events. These things, particularly the emotions, and particularly any reactions we have to something, anything pleasant and unpleasant. Really pay close attention to these, because often we miss these things in this practice. So again, we'll do 2 15-minute sessions with a 2-minute break in the middle. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. and setting the mind in a state of ease and relaxation, allowing it to rest in the present moment, and simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. Resting your gaze in the space in front of you. And releasing all appearances. Allowing the mind to come to rest. Simply being present. Resting in awareness. Keeping both the body and the mind completely relaxed, completely at ease. Whilst resting in that stillness of awareness, start to become aware of the movements of the mind. Paying particular attention to any emotions arising in the mind and any reactions to anything pleasant or unpleasant. Again, if you're constantly getting caught up in your thoughts and emotions, shift the emphasis back to the stillness. So mainly focus on the stillness. If you're still finding you're caught up, you can go back to anchoring yourself in the rhythm of the breath. So mainly focusing on that.